Hello, welcome along, and it's our Arc de Triomphe preview. The years roll by, don't they? But this race still remains top quality. It may have a different home this time around, but my word, we're so looking forward to it and hope you can join us as well. First Sunday in October. To preview the race, Scott Burton of the Racing Post joins us. He's been the Racing Post man in France for many, many years now. Great to have your company, Scott, once again. Nice to see you.
Great to be here.
And Katherine Ford from Equidia is here as well to cast her eye over the form. I think you've got a good record of finding the winner, Katherine, haven't you? So we're no pressure.
If you say so, John. I'm happy to take that compliment. So, yeah, we're going to be looking at some of the fallout from the trials which we've seen recently in France and elsewhere. Try and pick another winner for you all.
Scott, a great race. We know that. It's a new home, though, this year. How do you think Chantilly will cope?
In terms of the infrastructure, there's been a lot of planning, even down to what exit off the motorway you come, depending on where you're sitting. So they've worked very hard on that. As far as the actual race is concerned, Chantilly, I think, is one of the fairest tracks in France. Lovely, long, back straight. A lot of time for the jockeys to find a position, sort themselves out before they get to the turn. The other thing to bear in mind with it is it's quite steeply uphill from the home turn. The last 600 metres, they rise something like 9 metres to the winning line, probably more so than even a course like Ascot, which is known as an uphill finish. So you will get found out if you're not a proper stayer.
Yep. Sunday the 2nd of October, the key information there on that particular little bit of graphic we showed you there. And Katherine, prize money still absolutely sensational, isn't it? 5 million. 5
million, exactly. Europe's richest race. It was awarded last year as Longines' world's best race. So, yeah, with the likes of Trev recently winning Golden Horn last year, let's hope that we have another edition. We should do, as Scott was saying, it's going to be a really tough race at Chantilly. Stamina will be crucial. Well, the betting, now, as Katherine said, you know, so many of the trials are done now. We've got all the form. Betting really dominated, Katherine, by postponed for England and La Cressinière for France. Tight between them. Yeah, absolutely. Well, postponed best prices here. These are the prices from the 12th of September, so just the day after the Arc trials. Postponed is offered the best price 9-2, 3-1 is the lowest price, and we've got La Cressinière, the big French hope, 7-1. Almanzor, we'll have a chance to talk about him. He's Jean-Claude Rouget's second string, possibly at 7-1. We've got Makahiki, the Japanese. There'll be a lot of Japanese fans here supporting Makahiki, who we saw win the Prix Niel. Found, if she turns up, she could be an interesting one. Harzand, he's a bit of a question mark. It's slightly disappointing in the Irish Champion Stakes, but 12-1 is a big price. And then we go further down. We've got Minding, New Bay could turn up. Silver Wave won the Prix Foy at 25-1, quite a big price. And then we've also got horses like Fascinating Rock, Order of St George could possibly be in the mix, but these are the favourites. They are indeed. So much fun just picking apart all the various trials. And the end game for us three here will be trying to find you the winner of the Arc come the end of it. So let's begin now and have a look at the Prix Niel, first of all. Prix Niel, a marvellous trial for the Arc de Triomphe, and won this year by Makahiki, as Katherine was just alluding to there. The Japanese would so love to win it. Let's see what record Niel runners have in the Arc itself by just taking you back over recent years. Well, you've got to go back to Rail Link, Katherine, but there have been some great ones before. Absolutely. It's the dominating, in the last 20 years, it's the dominating trial, but it's interesting to see since Rail Link in 2006, the Prix Niel hasn't produced a single Arc winner. We've got 2 horses which were placed in the Niel, went on to go better in the Arc, but we've got some great horses there. Look, we've got Mongeur, Dalakani, Hurricane Run, Rail Link. So Peintre Célèbre obviously was beaten in the Niel and went on to confirm or do even better in the Arc. So, you know, it's maybe time the Niel threw up an Arc winner again. Scott, Makahiki, of course, every time the Japanese have a runner in the race, it just ignites the whole event to another level, doesn't it? I mean, unforgettable when Deep Impact, for example, came over, or Fevre, how he didn't win, we still don't know. They'll crack it one day. Is this the sort of horse who could do it?
He is. Interestingly enough, he's a son of Deep Impact, which doesn't make him particularly unique in Japanese racing, but he's owned by the same connections as well, Mr. Kaneko, and it's the first time they've had a runner in the Arc since. They've waited to think they found the right horse. And the vibe in Japan all year has been that they have an exceptional crop of 3-year-olds this year, and he came out on top in the Tokyo Yushun, the Japanese derby. So even from that point of view, he has to be respected. In terms of what he did in the Prix Niel, he did just enough and no more. It was, I suppose you'd describe it as a cosy victory. But this probably is where having a French jockey with Japanese experience like Christophe Lemaire comes in, because he knows that you can't win the Arc in the Prix Niel, but you could theoretically lose it. And he gave him a notably kind, gentle ride. And I think they were quietly pretty satisfied afterwards. So, yeah, there'll definitely be more to come. The trainer afterwards, Yasuo Tomomichi, was talking about giving him a very serious piece of work in the intervening 3 weeks. So, yeah, they won't leave any stone unturned, and he's obviously a serious contender.
Well, let's see how he did it then, Makahiki, winning the Prix Niel. He only won by a narrow margin. He's chasing down mid-term as we join the action, and will beat that rival narrowly. But I don't know, Katherine, some people think he was very, very impressive. Others that he doesn't meet the required standard. I'd love to know what you think.
It's a big question. To be honest, I think he did what he needed to do. I think it would have been worrying if he'd gone away and won very easily. People might have said he's done too much. He did exactly what he had to do, as you say. And if you look back at his previous performances, he never wins by very far. He's a horse. We saw with Scott, we were at Chantilly last week to see. He had a public training session. There was about 100 journalists there, including a lot of Japanese who were already over for the Prix Niel. So it's great to see them. And similarly, he worked with a travelling companion who's come over from Japan and came alongside and just beat him, but no fireworks. But I think he did what he needed to do, and I think Christophe Lemaire agrees.
Yeah. Mid-term, of course, at the start of the season back in England, he was the big talking horse of the whole season, wasn't he, until his flop at York, Scott?
He was anti-post favourite for the Epsom Derby for a long time, and I know that Sir Michael Stout and Khaled Abdullah and the whole team around them have retained a great deal of faith. He picked up an injury in the Dante, I think a pelvis injury, but I got the impression afterwards, after the Niel, that they were actually slightly disappointed they hadn't actually won. I think they do hold him in a great high regard. But against that, maybe that just is an extra tick in the box for Makahiki, because he looked like he beat him pretty easily. Yeah,
I agree. Looking at that again, Katherine, I thought he was well on top at the line. And your point's a good one. He only won the Japanese Derby by a whisker, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. We were saying about this stamina issue with the Chantilly. Quite a few people I've been speaking to in the run-up to the trials have said the trials at Chantilly 3 weeks before the Arc at Chantilly, it's an added factor. Longchamp, it's a much more easy track to run a trial on and then go back to the big race 3 weeks later. At Chantilly, you don't want to do too much in these trials.
Always superb to hear from the people closest to the action. So, with regards to Makahiki, let's hear now from his big race pilot, Christophe Lemaire.
He made his effort very easily, and I was confident that he would go on and win. But then I must admit the two horses in front, especially Doha Dream, stuck on well to their task. The track is good and fast today, and there wasn't much pace in the race, so it's to be expected that the leaders would stay on well. But I'd rather Makahiki win as he did today than to run out an effortless wide margin winner. At least today he had a good workout. It's a perfect preparation and exactly as we wanted. When I asked him for his effort at the entrance to the straight, I was pleased with his reaction. He behaved much as he does in a training gallop. He comes upsides very easily, then relaxes and never does too much. Today's race will be really beneficial as a trial to bring him on physically for his main objective, which is the Arc. It's good to win the Prix Niel, of course, but our main goal is the Arc.
And I'm taken with your point, Scott, about the connections feeling they've still got plenty to work with in terms of fitness before the Arc de Triomphe itself.
Yeah, I read a report, I have to say, with the aid of a translation piece of software. I read a report in the Japanese press on the Monday after the Niel, and the trainer was saying that he'd been deliberately quite easy on him so far, but he was really going to up the workload in the 3 weeks intervening. He said he was going to torture him. So I think we can expect him to strip a lot fitter on Arc Day.
Let's hope that's an error with your translation software, Scott.
Let's hope so. He was the Japanese Derby winner. We can see that footage now, Katherine. The point being, again, a little bit like at Chantilly for the trial. He wins, travels great, but wins only very narrowly, maybe. I mean, see, the Stars never used to win by very far, did he?
No, indeed. I mean, here you can see him coming through. He wasn't ridden by Christophe Lemaire that day. Christophe Lemaire is actually on the second horse, the Satono Diamond. It's a jockey called Hugo Kawada on that day who's giving it his all. And Christophe Lemaire is just going to go down by a nose in second place on this number 8 horse, Satono Diamond. But, yeah, he doesn't do a whole lot, and I saw the footage also of his 2,000 guineas second place in Japan, and there he had a very impressive end to the race. He went down by a length and a quarter that day, but yeah, he's a horse. He's not a flamboyant horse. The Japanese, we've talked about it, the amount of times they've been here, they've come and tried a few second places, Orfèvre, notably Nakayama Festa, but they seem to be learning every time, and it's great that they've got Christophe Lemaire on. He knows Chantilly like the back of his hand. The horse has been stabled here in Chantilly-Le Morlaix since the 19th of August, so they're giving him plenty of time to acclimatise this prep run. You know, I really hope they do it. Yeah,
it'd be nice to see. I must admit, I'm more glass half full, Scott, than half empty with this Makahiki. What about you?
Yeah, I'd say nearer 3/4 actually. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the horse. He's very, very laid back, as we've said before. He doesn't win by a lot. He was kind of half asleep when he was working at Chantilly on the gallops the other day as well. I'm sure they will do their best to rev him up for the day. And Christophe, he said there in the clip there, he didn't want to win by a long way. It was a very typical French ride, sit quite deep, come with your run, not try and do too much. So, yeah, I think it was an encouraging run, certainly.
And thumbs up for you, Katherine?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always a great supporter of exotic raiders, Japanese horses. It's great to see them here. I would love to see him win. I mean, we'll talk about some of the other horses later on. I'm not sure he's going to be my favourite at the end of the programme, but I would love to see him win, and I think he'll run very well.
Yep, close to being mine, that's for sure. So that is the Prix Niel. Let's have a look at the another of the major trials traditionally here in France for the fillies. It's the Prix Vermeil. Some super fillies have won this en route to glory in the Arc de Triomphe. Trèves, of course, herself was an absolutely stunning winner of this particular race. The Vermeil this year won by left hand. I mean, traditionally a pretty decent trial. I mean, obviously year in, year out, it'll go from strength to strength. It'll wane a bit, Scott, but Zakava was pretty special as well, wasn't she?
She was, as you say. If you look at that recent record, 4 of the last 8 winners, you have to take seriously anything that steps forward from that race, even some of the beaten horses, as we've seen. Left hand is a filly that Carlos Lafont-Parias has always liked. If you go back to her 2-year-old career, they ran in the Prix Marcel Boussac, Group 1 for 2-year-old fillies on the same Arc card. They ran her having only won a maiden. They've always thought a great deal of this filly. I think they possibly think she'll be even better next year, but I think as we understand it, she's going to be given the green light to run, assuming everything's all right in the intervening 3 weeks. They did have the option of going to Asker. And I have to say, I think you have to take her seriously. Her trainer knows exactly what he's doing. Won the race, obviously, with Salemia. We were talking about beating Orfèvre earlier on. And I think she's not flashy or flamboyant, but she's a definite stayer, and she has that all-important weight allowance that, as both a filly and a 3-year-old as well, she'll be carrying 5 kilos less than a horse like Postponed or New Bay. So I think, you know, she's quite long in the betting, the graphic we saw earlier on, but she's definitely a player.
What's your view on her, Katherine?
Yeah, she's not in my shortlist, but she did a nice performance, and I agree with Scott. She's a good filly. She was second in the Prix de Diane, beaten not very far from a big French hope, La Cressonnière. And interestingly, Carlos Lafont-Parias has been talking quite openly to Equidia here in France. Just after the trials about health problems. A lot of the big yards in Chantilly were affected by a virus in the first part of the season, and this filly also wasn't at 100% during the first semester, so she's coming to herself now, and she did it nicely in the Prix Vermeil.
Did he give any indication that there was scope for significant improvement from her?
Yes, I mean, he didn't go and say, like the Japanese, I think, said 70 to 80%. He didn't give any figures, but yeah, she should come on from it.
Well, let's take a look at her performance then here. The Prix Vermeil, mid-September, of course, at the course Chantilly, highlighted there in those famous Wertheimer colours, blue and white, coming from slightly off the pace. Scott, did you think that she won with the same sort of authority as Makahiki did, or is that stretching things a little bit?
Possibly took her a little bit longer to kind of draw alongside. Endless Time is the horse in blue, the Godolphin blue, that she ends up beating. And Endless Time, this was in some way less of a prep for her. She'll probably go to Ascot, but she would have been harder fit probably than left hand, but she was comfortably on top at the end, and yeah, I'd expect her to go forward. Speaking to the Wertheimer's racing manager in the week running up to the Prix Vermeil, Pierre-Yves Bureau, he mentioned that the Vermeil is always a very tricky race to plan for, because although it's a Group 1 and it's a very important prize, especially for a filly from breeding point of view, to win a Group 1 is a big deal. But there's a race behind a race was the phrase he used. And so you've always got to bear in mind that you don't want to give them that really, really hard run and then 3 weeks later come back for the Arc. But no, I'm very keen on her chances. OK. Well, we've already heard from Christophe Lemaire about the Japanese hope. What about the Vermeil winner? Left hand, ridden to success there by Maxime Guillon.
We put cheek pieces on her again today, as they worked well in the Prix de Diane. Sometimes this filly doesn't give everything in a finish, but today she did all I asked of her. We were confident that she would stay this distance because she has a long acceleration, and she's shown over 2,000 metres that she could go further. She relaxes well in a race and accelerates progressively. She was good today.
Do you think she's up to Arc de Triomphe standard?
I don't know. She was far from disgrace when she ran second in the Prix de Diane, beaten only half a length by La Cressonnière, so she should have a chance. Don't know what you make of Maxime's comment there. It wasn't an emphatic yes, she is going to be good enough.
No. No. I mean, I think, she was winning her first Group 1. She was beating horses who aren't confirmed in Group 1 company. There wasn't a single Group 1 winner lined up in the Prix Vermeil on Sunday. She's been beaten by La Cressonnière in the Prix de Diane. She'll have to improve significantly from anything that she's shown so far to play her hand in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, on my point of view. Yeah.
Lukewarm for me as well, Scott, I'm afraid. How strong are you with her?
No, I'll be mentioning her again towards the end of the programme. We'll put it like that.
Right. Interesting stuff. So there we are. That's the Niel and the Vermeil taken care of. Scott clearly has one or two nice surprises for us in a few moments' time as we move to the third of the trials from that particular day at Chantilly next. For the older horses, again over 1.5 miles, the Prix Foix. So, we've charted the great horses that have managed to win the Niel and the Vermeil. Let's take a look as well at the horses who've done well in both these two trials. Silver Wave, the winner this time. We need one to pop out, don't we, here, Katherine? Yes. Because it's been a long time since those two greats, Allez France and Sagas.
Yeah, exactly. You need to get the old memory working to go back to their Sagas in 1984, Allez France 10 years prior to that. So, yeah, the Prix Foix, I'm not a great fan of this race. In recent years, although last year we had Postponed, and I'm a big fan of Postponed and Silver Wave. I like this performance, maybe.
I like Silver Wave, Scott. Always seems to be underestimated, and despite this win in the Foix, bookmakers very quick to say he's just not going to be good enough. But the times he runs really well in big races at big prices, it's admirable.
It is, and I think we're quite quickly going to get to the stage where, apart from Katherine and Left Hand, that there are very few horses you can rule out of running a very, very big race here. And he would certainly be in that group where you'd say he's at every right to be considered a chance of finishing in the first three. But the upside with him is he's probably going to be quite a lot bigger price than some of the others.
He was 100 to 1 behind Golden Horn last year, Katherine. I mean, he finished 10th, but he really wasn't beaten that far.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Silverwave, he's changed trainers. He's now trained by Pascal Barry. This time last year, he was trained in the west of France by Alain Quetil, a former assistant to André Fabre. He's a guy who knows his stuff, but he's totally unknown to the international public, which I think is also would be a contributing factor to his price last year. But this year, I think he's done a lot better than he did last year. Last year, he won a Prix de Jockey Club, a French Derby trial, then had a bad race in the French Derby, finished 9th. And, you know, he was kind of always knocking on the door, but he didn't finish second in the Prix Niel last year. But it was always kind of a bit of a nearly, you know, for me, 100 to 1 was too big a price last year in the Arc. But this year, I think he's going into it in a much stronger position.
As we watch the Foire from this year again and see Silverwave win, you know, we mentioned the Arc run at 100 to 1, second in the Gannet at 25 to 1, second in the Niel last year at 16 to 1, Scott. It just serves to illustrate that you just can't really write him off, whatever the price.
You can't, and the thing that he's doing a lot better this season is he's relaxing in his races. You can see there he's wearing a hood. Pascal Barry has really worked very hard on getting him to relax. He wasn't really entirely sure when he ran him in the Grand Prix de Saint-Cloud that he would properly see out 2,400 metres, even though, as you pointed out, he was placed in the Niel last year and ran well in the Arc. But with each run, he seems to be settling better, and that can only help his chances. Whether he's just got that little bit of star quality that would make the difference between him being 4th or 5th and winning, we'll have to see. But he's definitely still improving.
We've heard so far on the programme from 2 big race jockeys. Now the winning trainer of Silverwave, Pascal Barry.
He had a perfect race. The pace was good and Silverwave settled nicely behind the leader. He changed his legs, accelerated. I couldn't have asked for more. He'll be back in 3 weeks. He didn't have a tough race today, and 1.5 miles is his perfect distance. This horse was a very good 3-year-old, but was late maturing and has progressed well this year after a disappointing first run. Since then, he's been fantastic. He's consistent and has both speed and stamina.
Will he be even more fantastic on October the 2nd? I know Katherine certainly thinks so. We'll see if she's got Silverwave down as her best outsider as we come to our conclusions at the end of the programme. But we will carry on. Some great trials en route to the Arc. Let's take a look at some of the most significant trials then away from France. I say away from France, may as well stay in France and have a look at the Diane firstly. This amazing horse, La Cressonnière, won there, Katherine. I suppose if you wanted to knock her, you're going to have to be very hard because she's unbeaten. And I suppose the distance of the race at the Arc itself is going to be the main doubt in people's mind.
Yeah, that is the major question. Otherwise, she's 8 from 8, 2 French classics. She won the Poule d'Essai des Pouliches, sorry, the French 1,000 guineas at Deauville back in May. Then she went on to confirm in the Prix de Diane. Jean-Claude Rouget, he doesn't like running horses at 3-week intervals for big races, so he chose to give her a prep in a race called the Prix de la Nonnette in Deauville, a Group 2 race, which is a bit of a farce, not a farce, but there were only 5 horses in the race, and 4 of them were trained by Jean-Claude Rouget, albeit not for the same owner. But she went on and won that in a very easy style, 2 lengths, a winner from a Group 1 winner who was in the field, Gemael, who'd won the Prix Saint-Hilary back in the spring. You know, she's done everything we've asked. Her connections have asked of her. They're very confident that she will stay and that she's a leading chance in the Arc.
Let's take a look then at the Prix de Diane, because Scott, not only is it a nice chance to see this wonderful horse in action, but of course there's a big form line as well here, because as you've already touched upon, Left Hand finishes in 2nd place.
Absolutely, and Left Hand had a dream run round the inside. Maxime Guyon was always where he wanted to be, just in behind the leaders. Christian de Muro has had to come right round the outside of everything. He had about 3 horses behind him, running past the Les Grandes Écuries and the Chateau. So she's obviously shown a great turn of foot to get up there and probably win one. Not quite going away, but she's comfortably better than Left Hand over that kind of trip. It's really, really hard to pick holes in her. Obviously, Katherine mentioned she hasn't yet proved she'll stay the trip. Christiane de Muro, her jockey, is absolutely adamant that she'll stay. I think Jean-Claude Rouget is probably more of a student of pedigrees. He'll have looked at it from that point of view. Katherine, you've probably got more of an opinion on whether she's bred for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's a daughter of Le Havre, who was a Prix du Jockey Club winner, so the Prix du Jockey Club over 2,100 metres. Most of his best progeny to date are kind of over a mile, 2,000, 2,100 metres. Obviously, this filly classic winner for this sire, very successful French sire, but he hasn't come up with any proven stayers yet. The Dame is a Galileo mare who was raced over 2,200 to 2,600 metres, but with no great success. And the Grand Dame was a Group 3 winner over 1,400 metres. So, you know, there is definitely a question mark for her, and she has a very, very, very similar profile to Avenir Certain, who was a Prix de Diane winner for Jean-Claude Rouget, also a daughter of Le Havre, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. She went on to finish third in the Arc, possibly not staying out quite to the line. And as this is Chantilly, the stamina is going to be ultra important. And so, for me, there's too many question marks.
Me too, Katherine, I have to say. Jean-Claude Rouget has a wonderful, wonderful stranglehold, really, because not just this remarkable mare, unbeaten La Cressonnière, but Almanzor has won the most recent of the trials away from France, the Irish Champion Stakes, in fantastic style, demonstrating a brilliant turn of foot here on the outside. Coming home together with another Arc possible, found strong form, Scott.
It is, it is. Everybody said beforehand this would be the strongest race run in Europe outside of the Arc this year. I mean, there were 6, 7, 8 Group 1 winners in it, and he's shown a fantastic turn of foot. Found is as solid a yardstick as you will find, and would not be, if you turned over the newspaper on Monday the 3rd of October and discovered Found had won the Arc, you wouldn't be at all surprised. So it's very, very good form. Your question would have to be, first of all, a horse with that much speed, can they stay the extra 200 metres? And also, same ownership, Antonio Caro, Gérard Augustin Normand. They've already got La Cressonnière. She's the one that's been plotted out for the Arc. They don't seem to be particularly keen to run the two against each other. So, no, from that point of view, he would be a fascinating contender if he turns up, and it would be a brave man or woman that would field against him. But I think probably in the camp, they think that La Cressonnière is a more guaranteed stayer, and there will be some people in the Rouget yard who just think she's better.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the fact that the vibes coming out of Jean-Claude Rouget's camp are that Almanzor won't run in the Arc. He's going to be saved for Ascot and the Champion Stakes 2 weeks later. And I think, for me, that is the biggest indication of the possibilities for La Cressonnière, because they obviously know them very well. And that race was interesting to look maybe at some of the beaten horses we mentioned. Found there was also New Bay in there, who finished a decent 4th. He's had a quietish season. He won a race in Deauville this month of August, but he's kind of rising. Typical André Fabre kind of profile of a dark horse who could come out for the Arc. But Almanzor, you know, I personally will be disappointed if he doesn't turn up. I was at Leopardstown when he won the Irish Champion Stakes. Well, the French camp were euphoric, and Christophe Soumillon, who was on board, was convinced he would stay 2,400 metres. So I guess it might be a question of we'll never know. Yeah.
And Harzand, also a beaten horse in Ireland, Katherine.
Yeah.
But he was struck into, wasn't he, during that race? Dermot Weld will need to work his magic to get him 100% now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dermot Weld was speaking in the Racing Post just after the weekend, saying that he was very sore and that he hoped that you know, his participation in the Arc would depend on how he came out of that you know, minor injury he was struck into. And I was speaking to Georges Rimo, one of the managers of the Aga Khan studs at Chantilly on trials day, and he was saying that he would run if the ground was very soft. So I would say a few question marks over Harzand, who was one of my favourites prior to this weekend.
He's obviously a horse that has the day he won the Derby, he had a problem with the foot. He had a pulse on his foot. And I think it was a rival trainer, Jim Bolger's blacksmith, who fixed him up. So maybe Dermot needs to be on the phone to Jim and say, can I borrow your vet as well?
Exactly. We cannot leave this preview of the Arc de Triomphe this year without probably the horse that they all have to beat. A good look now at Postponed, who, in my humble opinion, has gone from strength to strength since joining Roger Varian. Luca Cumani did great things with him, but he has just not looked back since his King George win for Cumani, Katherine.
Absolutely. I mean, this time last year, looking at the Prix, I kind of just swept it away with the back of my hand, saying the Prix, they're useless. They never come out and win the Arc. He didn't line up in the Arc, obviously, last year, but since then, every time he's run, he's just impressed me so much. This is at Meydan in the Dubai Shima Classic, beating the Japanese horse Duramente, and then he went on to Epsom, won the Coronation Cup, and I was really impressed with his performance at York in the Juddmonte International over a distance shorter than his best, 2,000 metres. Having just come out, the yard had been under a cloud, under an illness concern. He'd missed the Prix, not the Prix, the King George with a bad scope. And Roger Varian had said just a week before the Juddmonte International, that's when the horse really started to flourish, and that's when he knew he was going to line up in the Juddmonte International. So for me, that performance, beating Found again, was just exceptional. And we've seen horses come from the Juddmonte International in the past to win the Arc, and I think for me, Postponed is the horse that ticks the most boxes.
I think most people would agree with that, Scott. Do you?
Yeah, he's definitely the form horse in the race. The statistic, if you like, or the handicap that he has to overcome is obviously, as an older colt, he's carrying quite a lot more weight, especially if you're looking at horses like La Cressonnière. He's got 5 kilos more, I think I mentioned already. And it's not something that's been historically that easy to do recently. And if he is good enough to win this, then he'll be an exceptional Arc winner. I think you have to go back to Dylan Thomas for the last older male winner of the Arc. It's just the 3-year-olds, the way they're trained these days, they develop so much better, and they still have more scope for improvement at the end of the season. And that weight for age makes a big difference. It's very, very hard. You get a superstar like Triomphe, who won at 4 as well, but it is very, very difficult. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of the horse. He's a gorgeous looker, isn't he, when you see him up close? And Roger Varian is a very, very talented trainer as well, and I'm absolutely sure he'll win the Arc one day. It's just a concern for me that you can go through all the horses we've looked at, especially the 3-year-olds, that one of them is going to have a good day, and he's going to have to be really, really good to give that weight away.
Food for thought then to end with. We've looked at all of the trials. It's time for these two now to put their considerable reputations on the line by telling us who's now going to win the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. Who would like first stab? Who's looking more confident? Katherine, you have first.
Well, no surprises. No, I think for me, Postponed is going to be the horse this year. It's going to be my favourite for the Arc, and then an outsider at an interesting price, Silver Wave. He's offered at 25 to 1 at the moment by the British bookmakers. I think he could well run into a place.
Scott?
I've already talked about Left Hand at quite considerable length and probably bored everybody about it. I think she's a very, very big price, and I definitely think she's got the capability to run in the first 3. She could run a career best and only be good enough to be 6th, but she's a big price, and that compensates for it. I think amongst the favourites, I think probably Makahiki is the solid one. I think maybe Japan will break their duck this year.
I think they'll go close, but I'm with Katherine. I think Postponed is a marvellous horse, much improved this year. My only worry would be the prospect of really, really soft ground, and then I'd have perhaps second thoughts. Well, Katherine and Scott, thank you very much indeed. It's been great fun to chat things through with you. Enjoy the big race, won't you? That's it for our programme. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, Sunday, the 2nd of October, the greatest mile-and-a-half race in the world, the Qatar Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe.